Okay, so I have made my presentation on our textbook, chapters 3 and 4. So chapter 3 is titled, There Aren't a Lot of For Sure Facts, Building Communities for History Inquiry. And chapter 4 is called To Find Out Things We Didn't Know About Ourselves, Personal Histories. So today we're going to talk a lot about inquiries in the classroom and allowing students to utilize a strategy of questioning and just digging deeper into the information. Okay, so the first topic in chapter 3 is inquiry. Um, so the author focused mostly on giving your students the opportunity to have conversation with each other, with the teacher as well, and then that allows students to quote unquote do history. So basically, in your own classroom, you want lively conversation, conversations focusing on questions. Teachers model and students practice. Modeling is something we've talked about. And yeah, so we want students to be active learners. Next, the chapter talks about talking historically. Um, so this is basically focusing on language use in the classroom and how language is a really big part of history and the social studies curriculum. So without that background knowledge on language, students may struggle with the curriculum. Therefore, you want to make sure that you're focusing on the language that is within the curriculum. So, as it says, language is a crucial part of teaching history. Language can shape how we see certain historical events. By talking historically, students develop a deeper understanding for historical events. Developing a multicultural setting gives students the opportunity to develop a wider range of understanding for history. So that right there, it's just like touching upon how you yourself as a teacher should work on making your classroom environment focus on like multicultural characteristics, because that will help students um, to understand historical events as well. Next is the importance of questions. So this is, we talked about inquiry, but also engaging students in conversation requires questions that are worth discussing. So this is engaging the students. You want them to be interested in what you're asking. Questions that don't have simple answers, so it requires them to dig deeper or utilize other resources to find the answer. Um, Data sources students can use to answer these questions. So as I just said, multiple sources, and allowing students to look into history's past. So allowing them to, again, dig deeper into what we're learning. Next is the importance of prior knowledge. So this is another topic that we've talked about in our class. As we all know, prior knowledge is extremely important. We want our students to be able to connect what they've learned in the past to what they're presently learning. So as we all know, all students have different amounts of prior knowledge coming into the classroom. History is interpreted by many outlets such as the media, historians, etc. So you may not be you may not know exactly what prior knowledge your students are going to come into your classroom with. So you need to make sure that students may have gotten their prior knowledge from many different outlets, so you need to make sure that you have your students remain on the same page or get them all on the same page. Students are able to develop new knowledge utilizing prior knowledge. So they're able to build off of each other. Next is imaginative entry. So this is just allowing students to basically use the information they learned and make it into something different. So this helps them to completely understand a topic in a different way. So, such as role play, so allowing them to play out a certain scene in history helps them to develop a deeper understanding. Simulations, giving students the opportunity to imagine themselves in the past. So that's actually placing themselves in the past, and that's more of a deeper connection for them. Imagine events that occurred in the past through different perspectives, encouraging more questioning. So that's basically what we've been focusing on so far in this chapter is questioning and inquiry. So back to this one, imagine events that occurred in the past through different perspectives. So as we talked about, there are many different outlets that talk about history. We have biographies, we have historians, the media as well. So allow them to see the different perspectives and maybe someone who has lived through history. That would be cool too. Next is asking historical questions. So you want to relate history to your own students. Ask them about their own history. So this allows them to become more engaged within their own learning because they're going to be interested in their own history. So I know that many times when I was in school, my teachers would have me interview a grandparent or an older family member, and they've lived through many historical events that you wouldn't even know. So this engages them more because it's something that is related to them, and it's meaningful to them. This will engage students in history. Students enjoy conversation with their peers as well as with the teacher. So while teaching history, we want our students to feel comfortable with talking with each other and talking with the teacher about the topic at hand. Next is collecting historical information. So students must acquire the knowledge that is necessary to collect multiple resources in relation to historical events. So this could easily be done if you bring students to the library in the school, or if you teach them to search online safely, and it allows them to see all of the resources that are available to help them learn more about the different perspectives of historical events. Have students discuss history with relatives. As I just mentioned, these relatives may have lived through historical events. Students should be able to decide whether or not a source is reliable. So this is really important. Just as we are doing research in grad school, we make sure that all of our sources are reliable. We want the same for our students when they are looking at sources related to history. Okay, so drawing conclusions, reflecting on learning. Assessments and activities in the classroom should be authentic. So this is also something we've talked about throughout all of our courses. We want our students to feel engaged in their assessments and activities. We don't want to simply have them put a pen to a paper and not really remember what they're learning. We don't want to imply any of the rote learning or memory. History can be interdisciplinary, so that's something we've talked about. Literacy and social studies, English language arts and social studies, all that put together can make for a really cool lesson. So this is an example, incorporate written narrative where students can write about their own history. This could be a really cool summative assessment just to kind of make sure they get the idea. And then this will give students the opportunity to reflect on what they have learned historically. So it will do two things, which is really cool. Okay. So assessing students' learning, use assessment as a tool for yourself and your students. So this is something we all know. We want to be able to see that our instruction was beneficial for students and effective, and we want to make sure that our students were able to retain the information. As I said, assessment can be used to gear your future instruction. Authentic tests will rely on multiple assessments, not just one. This can include rubrics, observation while students are completing work, written feedback right on the papers or the tests, and student growth. So you want to see how much your students grow from the beginning of the unit to the end. So that's important to look at as well. And continue to give students the opportunity to represent their knowledge in multiple formats. As we know, many students, not all students can present their knowledge in the same way. So giving students multiple formats will eventually be able to touch upon each one of your students and give them that opportunity to really show what they know. And as I said here, an assessment does not have to be simple multiple choice questions. It can include multiple formats that give students the opportunity to show what they know. Okay, so next is the history of me in the context of diversity. So this is basically focusing, it allows students to take ownership of their own history, as we said, that will engage them. Welcome diversity into your classroom. If you model for the students welcoming diversity, they will in turn um, apply that to their own approaches in the classroom. So it's important to have kind of just like a very diverse classroom in which you welcome all cultures, and this will allow them to approach history and social studies in a different way as well. Provide multiple formats of assignments to motivate students and allow them to feel comfortable in their learning environment. That's something we all are aware of. So extensions give students the opportunity to extend on what they have learned. This can be through multiple formats such as biographies, book reports, and cooperative learning groups. So many times some students don't ever want the unit to end and they're very engaged in it. And if you do have students like that, you can give them maybe like a little extra credit assignment, or just as they say in the textbook, an extension such as a biography, book report, and then, or you can make a cooperative learning group where they work with themselves and just a fun way to close the unit, and another way to assess students as well. Okay, so now that we've gone through both of the chapters, I've created 3 discussion questions. This first one focuses on authentic assessment and history in the classroom. This one focuses on what activities could you have students complete in order to make their own history come alive in the classroom. If you've ever assigned something such like this in your classroom, and how did it turn out? And the third question, what grading tools would you utilize in your classroom when implementing an authentic assessment such as History of Me? So what other, just besides a numerical scale, would you use? Would you use a rubric? Would you use other assessment tools? That's something that we would all want to know. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed my presentation.